Dear students, I welcome you all in today's lecture on Gabriel Almond's structural functional approach. Objectives of the lecture are to understand the basic model of structural functional approach, to outline its basic features and components, and to have a brief critical analysis of Gabriel Almond's structural functional approach. The structural functional analysis is one of the primary system derivatives in political science and a major framework for political research, coming in through the sociology and originating mainly in the writings of anthropologists like Malinowski and Radcliffe Brown, and adopted in political science, especially in comparative politics by Gabriel Almond. Structural functional analysis is basically concerned with the phenomena of system maintenance and regulation. The basic theoretical proposition of this approach is that all systems exist to perform functions through their structures. The central question of this approach, as Young says, is, and I quote, what structures fulfill what basic functions and under what conditions in any given society, quote unquote. It is a form of systemic analysis which looks at political system as a coherent whole which influences and is in turn influenced by their environments. A political system is held together by the presence of legitimate force throughout the system. It has three main characteristics: comprehensiveness, independence, and existence of boundaries. The interactions that take place within a system are not between individuals but between the roles which these individuals adopt. Lastly, the political system is an open system and is involved in communications with systems beyond its boundaries. Dear students, let's discuss conceptual framework of Gabriel Almond. Gabriel Almond's conceptual framework evolved through three phases. He wrote an article in 1956 in which he said that the system is an inclusive concept which covers all of the patterned actions relevant to the making of political decisions. For him, system was more important than the process because system implied totality, interactions among units within the totality, and stability in these interactions, which he described as changing equilibrium. Almond relied upon Max Weber and Talcott Parsons in conceptualizing the political system's actions and turned to concepts like structure and role replacing the legal vocabulary of institution, group, or organization. Lastly, he introduced the concept of political culture, which is embedded in a particular pattern of orientations to a political action. These patterns generally extend beyond the boundaries of the political system. In 1958 and 1959, Almond and his colleagues at Princeton University focused on the politics of developing countries. They applied their concepts of structures and functions to the changes taking place in these developing countries, avoiding the examination of their constitutions and formal government institutions. Later, Almond and Coleman edited and published a book entitled Politics of Developing Areas on this subject. Almond and his collaborators introduced a new concept of comparative politics. The concept of political system replaced the state and its legal apparatus. Structure replaced institution, role took place of office, and function substituted for power. Almond suggested that all political systems have four characteristics. First, all political systems have structures. Second, the same political functions are performed in all political systems. Third, all political structures are multifunctional. And fourth, all political systems are mixed in the cultural sense. While applying the structural functional approach, Almond has formulated a sevenfold classification of functions performed by a political system. He divides them into 4 inputs and 3 output functions, which are: first, input functions that are political in nature. These include political socialization and recruitment, interest articulation, interest aggregation, and political communication. Second, output functions that are governmental in nature, which include rule making, rule application, and rule adjudication. The first 4 of them are input functions. They are performed by the non-governmental subsystems, including the general environment. The last 3 are output functions. These are performed by the government. These are the 3 well-known traditional functions that are executive, legislative, and judicial. Gabriel Almond's contribution primarily lies in enunciating the 4 input functions. He further asserts that the input functions are more important in the political systems of the developing countries, while mentioning that the various functions are universal, that is, they are common to traditional, transitional, and modern systems. Almond believes that the mode, manner, or style of their performance differs. This style is measured by him on 4 dimensions, that are manifest or latent, specific or diffuse, universal or particular, and instrumental or effective. For him, the modern style is characterized by manifestness, specificity, universalism, and effectiveness, whereas the traditional style has just the opposite attributes, tending to be latent, diffuse, and particularistic. Dear students, let's discuss each of the 7 input and output functions in detail. In input or political functions, we have political socialization and recruitment. Political socialization is a psychological concept. All political systems tend to perpetuate their culture and structures through time, and that they do this mainly by means of socializing influences of the primary and secondary structures through which the young of the society pass in the process of maturation. According to Almond and Verba, it's thus a process by which political cultures are maintained and changed. It is concerned with the orientation of individuals towards political objects. In other words, political socialization is the process of induction into political culture, and it promotes a set of attitudes among the members of this system. Political systems tend to perpetuate their cultures and structures through times, and all this is done by socializing influences. Political socialization is thus transmitting of political culture and is attributed to the political values and norms of the society. In political socialization, Almond includes values, norms, and patterns of behavior suited to the political system. The family, the church, the school, the peer groups, voluntary associations, experiences during employment, mass media, political parties, and direct contact with the political systems, however, serve major agents in process of political socialization. The process of socialization may be latent or manifest, specific or diffuse, particular or universal, and effective or instrumental. It is latent when it is in the form of transmission of information, values, or feelings vis-a-vis the role, input or output of other social systems such as family, which affect attitudes towards role, input or output of political system. It's manifest when it takes the form of explicit transmission of information, values, feelings vis-a-vis the roles, inputs and outputs of the political system. The political recruitment functions take up where the general political socialization function leaves off. Political recruitment means the obtaining of political leaders It refers to the recruitment of the members of the society out of particular subcultures, religious communities, statuses, classes, ethnic communities, and the like, and inducting them into the specialized roles of the political systems, training them in the appropriate skills, providing them with the political cognitive maps, values, experiences, and ethics. The recruitment pattern, according to Almond, is both structurally and culturally dualistic. In primitive or traditional political system, the recruitment function is also dualistic, but the achievement or performance criteria is less explicitly and generally applied. Then we have interest articulation. Interest articulation means the voicing of political demands to the decision makers. It is concerned with the formulation and expression of interests, claims, and demands for political action. In other words, the process by which individuals and groups make demands on political decision makers is called interest articulation. It is the first step in the political conversion process and occurs at the boundary of political system. Almond talks about four main types of structures involved in the interest articulation, namely institutional interest groups, non-associational interest groups, anomic interest groups, and associational interest groups. In institutional interest groups, he included legislatures, political executives, bureaucracies, armies, churches, and the like. In the category of non-associational groups, he has included kinship lineage, ethnic, regional, status, and class groups. The third category is concerned with spontaneous breakthroughs into the political system from the society, such as riots, demonstrations, and the like. The last category of associational interest group includes specialized structures like trade unions, businessmen, or industrialists, ethnic associations, associations organized by religious denominations, civic groups, and the like. Interest articulation, according to Almond, is diffuse, particularistic, and ascriptive in the traditional society, but it becomes specific, universalistic, and instrumental in modern one. Furthermore, the performance of interest articulation function may be manifest or latent, specific or diffuse, general or particular, instrumental or effective in style. Then we have interest aggregation. Interest aggregation means the managing of political demands by bodies such as parties and interests. Every political system has some way of aggregating the interests, claims, and demands which have been articulated by the interest groups of the polity. Interest aggregation is achieved either by formulation of general policies in which interests which have been articulated may be combined, accommodated, and compromised, or by the recruitment of political personnel who are more or less committed to the particular pattern of policy. The function of articulation and aggregation overlap just as those of aggregation, recruitment, and rulemaking. The distinction between interest articulation and interest aggregation is a fluid one, but aggregation refers to the more inclusive levels of combinatory process, pressure groups, and political parties in developed modern political system have distinctive regulative functions, the first for articulation and the second for aggregation. Party system is, however, the distinctively modern structure of political aggregation, and in the modern, developed, and democratic political system, it regulates or gives orders to the performance of the aggregative function by the other structures. Almond classified party system into authoritarian system, dominant non-authoritarian system, competitive two-party system, and competitive multi-party systems. From the point of view of aggregative function is performed, political parties fall into three categories. First, secular, pragmatic and bargaining parties. Second, absolute value-oriented or ideological parties. And third, particularistic or traditional parties. Lastly, we have political communication. Political communication means the sending of messages within the political system, between the system and outside the system. All the functions of socialization and recruitment, interest articulation, interest aggregation, rule making, rule application, and rule adjudication are performed by means of communication. It is therefore the medium through which all other functions of the political system have necessarily to be performed. According to Almond, political communication is crucial boundary maintenance function. Autonomy is the media which makes for a free flow of information from society to polity and from one political structure to another, as well as an open feedback from the output to input again. In modern political system, differentiated media of communication have arisen which have developed a vocational ethics of neutral or objective communication. Primitive political systems, however, have their drummers and runners. Medieval towns had their cries, and noblemen and king their heralds. Along with the input functions, there are three output functions which are performed by the government as a rule making, rule application, and rule adjudication, which corresponds to three well-known traditional governmental functions, that is, legislative, executive, and judicial. Dear student, let's discuss them in detail. First is rule making. The rule-making process is present in some form or the other in all systems. According to Almond, in traditional or primitive societies, rule-making tends to be either charismatic process or slow process of accumulation of traditions which are in part a derivative of the day-to-day rule enforcement and rule adjudication of the system. In modern or developed political systems, this function is performed by the parliaments representing the people. Second is rule application. It means the enforcement of the rule made by the rule-making authority in one form or the other. In a modern society, the rules are executed by officials who need a very high degree of administrative capacity. Thus, the role and importance of bureaucracy has been considerably increased. To Carl Friedrich, bureaucracy is the core of the modern government. According to Almond, and I quote, "In the modern era, most legislation is of a very general kind. In order that it may be effectively enforced, administrative officials must work out regulations or regulatory codes elaborating the policy which has been adopted by the political branch of the government." Quote unquote. Usually, the extent to which a general policy is carried out is dependent upon the interpretations which bureaucrats give to it. In the absence of such a central directing policy-making agency, the trend towards inertia and decentralization appears to be inevitable, for in the nature of the case, the bureaucratic monster is a technical instrumental monster. Finally, we have rule adjudication. Gabriel Almond defines rule adjudication as the performance of the adjudication function involves the process of making authoritative decisions as to whether or not a rule has been transgressed in a given case. According to Easton, the process of adjudication accepts a certain set of settled or presumed rules. It applies these to the conflict situation in the society. Adaptations and change. Besides these 7 input and output functions, the core idea of Almond's structural functionalism is how the structures of the political system function and how through the functions and other ways adjust with other systems as well as with the environment surrounding it. This, like Easton's analysis, lays the foundation of general system analysis. It has been held by Almond and many others that behind the building up of a general system, there is the very crucial role of adaptation and change. The two, of course, cannot be effectively separated. If the political system adjusts or adapts it with the new challenges emerging from the environment, then that means that the political system has succeeded and is adapting with the outer conditions which we call the environment. Again, change travels with the adjustment or adaptations. Adaptations means making suitable for a new use or purpose. When a political system is faced with new circumstances, it cannot outright neglect or reject them. So, it tries to accommodate itself with the new situation. Moreover, in a democratic setup, it is not an easy task to neglect the new situation because the citizens might have support or weaknesses for these. Naturally, the political system will gradually adjust itself with the challenges. This adaptation or adjustment brings about change in the political system. The change is inevitable because in an open system, the political system cannot keep itself aloof from other systems. This adaptation or adjustment brings about change in the political system. The change is inevitable because in an open system, the political system cannot keep itself aloof from other systems. Thus, adaptation and change are linked. We thus find that Almond's theory of general system is also a theory of political change. Because of the influence of outer factors, the political system is impelled to adapt itself with them, and this finally causes change. This change may be qualitative or quantitative, but the fact remains that in both Easton's and Almond's general systems analysis, there is both adaptation and change. Almond's theory of political change denotes those transactions between political systems and its environment that affects change in general system performance. The traditional political scientists did not deal with the concept of political change so elaborately. Their main concern was the functions of the institutions. Almond calls this adaptation or adjustment conversion process. The demands or claims coming from other systems or from the environment do not remain unattended. Today or tomorrow, they are converted into decisions or policies. The demands, claims and supports for these are called inputs and the decisions policies are called outputs. This is the conversion process. Inputs are converted into outputs. The conversion takes place through feedback. But the conversion depends upon the capabilities of the political system. Here, capabilities indicate the ability of the political system to receive the demands and claims, which are called inputs, and act accordingly, which means to implement them. The question of augmentation of capability is also a pertinent issue. For this purpose, it is essential on the part of political system to proceed the work of political socialization and political recruitment. This will help the political system to create a support base for the existing system. Thus, Almond asserts, capabilities analysis is the method by which the empirical investigation of political system is undertaken. It links the deductive analysis with the reality. And how does the change take place? It is the function of political system to respond to the demands, claims and supports, and this finally leads to change. Almond identifies three different sources from which these originate. These are the elites, their associates and affiliated groups, numerous social groups and organizations which are active in the society and the environment. Finally, within the political system, the demands may originate. Whatever may be the sources of demands be the political system for convenience should respond. It's mainly due to the fact that if the political system deliberately neglects the demands, some sort of political turmoil will disturb the political system. So, for the sake of stability of the political system, it's really incumbent for it to take care of demands and to do something so that stability is not disturbed. Dear students, Almond's system analysis also throws light on the stability and along with the balance or equilibrium. Both Easton and Almond were concerned with the stability of the political system. This stability largely depends on the equilibrium position or the balance between the inputs and the outputs. The structural functional approach has been widely adopted in the field of comparative government and politics because it claims to provide standard categories for different political systems. It is heuristic value, its influence on the development of comparative politics in several different ways, and the success of the model for comparative political research must be admitted. The structural functional analysis has really enriched our discipline. It has also offered new insights into political realities. And that is one reason that this model has been widely adopted and is being used as descriptive and comparative framework. The structural functionalism of Gabriel Almond has been criticized for its value orientations, its tautological premises, and its vague and non-operational conceptual units. Neither its conceptual framework nor the ranges of derivable propositions for research are as definite as one would like. What Almond has produced is at best, as Meehan points out, a classificatory scheme or perhaps a model, a very imperfect and loose model that can be used to order political data and perhaps standardized observations of political phenomena. Meehan also thinks that the functional categories that Almond suggests are far too broad to be of much use. Almond has not produced a theory, of course, not even as well articulated classification scheme. The taxonomy is incomplete and ambiguous. Oren Young has criticized its tendency to force divergence phenomena into a systematic framework of fallacy of functional teleology, the fallacy of deductive functionalism, and postulate of universal functionalism. When applied to third world countries, the functional framework cannot analyze the empirical reality that exists in these societies. The complex political realities of these societies cannot be effectively explained with the help of assumptions on which the theoretical scheme of the functionalism is based. The gravest charge against Almond is he has, in a clandestine way, supported the existing structure of the capitalist system. He wants to establish that the capitalist system, through its management and self-regulatory mechanism, can defend itself. It is a better system in comparison with other systems. Finally, the structural functionalism brings about a separation between functions and structure. While commenting on this, G. Sartori says the structural functional analyst is a lame scholar because he cannot really visualize the interplay between the structure and the function, and because the two terms are seldom, if even neatly disjointed, the structure remains throughout a twin brother of its imputed functional purposes. Dear students, nevertheless, with the help of structural functionalism, we can easily compare the different political systems. Not only this, Almond's model will help us compare the various systems systematically. It has introduced new conceptual tools in political science and enriched the discipline. Thus, by providing new insights into political realities, the structural functional approach of Gabriel Almond has therefore broadened and enriched comparative politics. Dear students, This was all about today's lecture. Hope you have enjoyed it well. Thank you. Have a nice time.